It's Marina from the Bowcatcher Salon. Today we're going to do something different. We're going to look at a man's haircut. This would also work for a women's haircut that's very short, any cropped haircut, or children's haircut as well. But instead of me doing it, we're going to let somebody who doesn't know how to cut hair actually do the work just on my instructions. So this is Frankie, who's our social media manager and has no hairdressing training whatsoever. Apart from the fact that she's grown up around the salon. So I'm going to hand the comb over to her and some scissors over to her, and she's going to be doing this haircut just with my instruction. So let's get started. You need to comb out this hair. It's already been wet, as flat as possible. I would comb it in the direction that it grows. So Richard's hair grows forward, so yes, go forward. Richard, do you want to take off your glasses, please? Richard's feeling a little bit nervous because he knows that Frankie actually doesn't know what she's doing. So one of the most important things about doing just a simple trim is to have all of the perimeters of the hair very tidy, because when they get hairy and messy, that's when everything looks really wrong. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Move over to this side. So all of this hair, we want to comb it as flat as possible against the skin. It helps if the hair is quite wet for this part. Okay, so you can see where there's no good edges here. It's just a bit jaggy and hanging over the ears a little bit. So we're going to go in with scissors and we're just going to clean that up. Start here and make a nice line up through there. Snip, snip, snip. Make sure you're doing half an inch or less. Perfect. Okay. Comb that back all straight down. Straight down. Okay. Now the next thing we can see, I don't know if they can see it, here, which is really messy, is just around the ear. So we're going to very carefully go in with the tips of the scissors and just do snip, 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 and make all of this messy hair here disappear. Use your comb to comb the pieces away. And then at the same time, you're re-straightening your line. Don't go too high. Okay. See, already to me, this is looking a bit better. Now we need to do around the edge of the ear. So a good thing to do is pull the ear out of the way. Don't be afraid to just pop that ear right out of your way. Maybe do a little combing to make sure everything is straightened up. Now we'll come in just here at the level of the sideburn. You're reaching with your arm in a different way on this side. So you have to adjust yourself for that a little bit. Now, where's that ear? Where's the ear?
There.
Okay, don't cut the ear. Go ahead and pull the ear down with your hand. Or keep your finger sort of under there. Be careful that you're not going up with your scissors. You want to stay level. Little snips at a time. Good. Okay. Now you can see that you've still got a few little hairs in here that you can move your fingers out of the way, because with that you can just go in. Just make sure you're doing tiny snips using the tips of your scissors so that it's not possible to cut any skin. Richard will be glad of that. Okay. And then bend that ear down again and carry on around the back of the ear. Yep, very good. Okay, so We've done the 2 side perimeters, which are a big part of why this haircut all grown out was looking super messy. Start there with bringing the hair all forward. So do we remember from the fringe trim, the problem with hair is that it shrinks from wet to dry. So we don't want to cut more than we mean to. So instead of just cutting this against the skin, you want to get that hair in your fingers and bring it down a little bit and make sure you're only cutting about 1/2 inch. In a regular haircut, Richard might want more cut off, but since we're only trimming, we're only doing a touch-up because our hairdressers are closed during the coronavirus crisis. We're only going to cut a little bit. Now, look at your hand, and are your fingers flat or are they a little bit crooked? Okay, so let's make sure that we keep everything level. Otherwise, where you're cutting along the edge of your finger, you're also going to end up with a crooked line and have to redo it. Yeah. Now when you're cutting with hair with the scissors going towards your hands, if you feel like you have sort of run out of room, stop and recomb and rehold so that you're never cutting more than about 3 snips at a time. Otherwise you risk cutting your hand. So the next step, just to marry up these 2 things, the sides with the front part of the hair, I'm just going to go ahead and come in here and comb a little bit out to the sides, because if you look, you can see here where you've cut a nice line here, you've got a little bit of hair hanging down there, so you want to adjust for that and cut that part as well. Make sure your scissors are level. Okay, and okay. If Richard wore his hair like this, he'd have basically a Roman haircut at this point, but he doesn't. Nevertheless, once the hair is put back into its usual sort of way that he wears it, you don't see that line across there, but that hair in the front is trimmed now so that it's not hanging down his forehead in unsightly pieces. So again, same principle. Bring that hair straight down as much as possible. Try to respect the fact that the hair grows in different directions, but go ahead and bring it down so that we can get a nice clean line on the back of the neck. We want to, if you only cut this straight across here, it's going to look a bit silly. So let's follow the natural growth of the hair, but still taking off. So we're coming down a little bit here and going up a little bit here. And remember, you've already cut this behind the ears, so we want to marry those 2 together. So you don't want to have an exact straight line here, nor an exact straight line going across, but you just want to follow the hairline and bring off about 1/2 inch of all this messy hair, going with the way the hair grows. There you go. So we can safely say that Richard's looking a lot more tidy already. But his hair is quite thick and it's going to lay a little bit heavy. So I'm going to show Frankie a little trick for just debulking the hair, but without knowing how to do proper layers. So at this point, normally, I would start coming into this haircut and bringing the hair out and taking this amount of hair off. And if you feel really confident, go ahead and do that. You can see easily from the guidelines that Frankie's made how to just snip that off. If you don't feel confident about doing that part, I wouldn't worry about it, because what we can do is sort of a hair hack for in-between haircuts is come in and just randomly pick up little sections of hair and twist them. Get your comb out of your way, and then without closing your scissors fully, just do little snips up the hair like that. And that's going to take off a significant amount of hair that's going to debulk everything and re-texturize. And we basically are going to go around the whole head doing exactly this. If you close your scissors fully at this part, you're going to cut off a big chunk of hair and it's going to look ridiculous. So don't do that. So just little pieces, snip, snip, snips out, and kind of think about the head in 4 quadrants. So you make sure that you've done a good amount of this in each quadrant. So right now we have dividing the head in the middle and dividing the head here. We're working in this quadrant, and we're just going to go. You don't recomb the hair after you do these because it helps you be able to see where you've already gone. Just keep randomly picking up, and I do mean random. There's no real rhyme or reason to this, apart from if you see a part an area that's thicker than another part, you can go back over it a couple of times if you feel you need to. But just work your way all through that. In the hair that's too short to pick up with your fingers, don't worry about it, just leave that. And just keep going right the way through, including in the very front fringe area. The other thing that this does is give some longevity to a haircut. And I do this even when I'm doing a proper haircut if a person has quite thick hair or they like a lot of texture. Because then you don't have the texture all put at one level as in with a thinning shear. So I've done this quadrant, and now I'm going to turn it over to Frankie, who's very anxious to get going. And she's going to work on this quadrant here, just from the middle of the ear forwards and up to the center of the top of the head.
Like that?
Yeah. Don't close scissors fully, just tap, tap, tap.
Like that?
Yep.
That's it?
Yep.
And another one?
Yep. Make sure that you're really twisting it from the base.
Okay.
So next to the scalp, at the root of the hair, really get a good twist on that. There you go. As you go through and do it, you start to be able to judge whether you're taking much hair out or not, and you might get a little bit more confident and do a little bit more of the snipping.
Should it be closer to the base or to the top?
I would do a snip at the base, a snip in the middle, and a snip near the top.
So 3
on each twist. Twist,
So like
twist, twist.
one here,
Yeah,
one
Up.
here,
yeah,
and one here.
yeah.
That didn't really take much out.
So you're not closing your scissors quite enough. But when I said don't close them fully, you still do have to close them enough to where you're getting a little bit of a snip in there. It takes a little practice, but once you feel it, then yeah, there you go, see? Voila, okay. Twist, deep twist. And before you move on to your next section, put your hands through the hair and feel if there's any areas that are feeling extra bulky or still too thick. And if you think, yes, that needs a little bit more, this is a very safe way to just go back in there and debulk a little bit more. As long as you do a little bit by little bit by little bit, you won't go wrong. If you're working on somebody who's got really naturally straight hair, the hair needs to be very wet to get this to work properly. With curly hair, wiry hair, it's not quite as hard if the hair is not soaking wet. It's already a bit shorter towards the nape of the neck, so that hair is going to be much harder to twist. So we might only be working here across the occipital bone and above. Don't worry about combing them out afterwards, because you remember it makes you be able to see where you've been if you leave them quite messy. Nice. Give all that hair a good combing. Get all that loose hair out. Maybe use your neck brush or a little cosmetic brush that's clean, just to whisk away all the extra hair so it's not uncomfortable. The last thing we're going to do about this haircut is clean up all the edges. You can see here on the neck there's a lot of fuzz and fur, and that's part of what makes a haircut look untidy. So we're going to clean that up using our trusty small trimmers. We're going to start in the middle and work our way out to the edges. Rather than cutting into this hair, we want to cut up to this hair. So we're not actually taking a line here, because that would be ridiculous and too high. So we're going to come up from the bottom just to this hair and stop when we reach that hair. Really gentle little movements so that you're cleaning up the messy fur that gets on the neck, but you're not cutting into your nice haircut that you've already started. You can always do more, but you cannot put it back on. So never reach around from the back to the sides to try to get something. If you can't reach it, you need to go to it, because that's where a lot of people also will get in trouble trying to do a trim. They're reaching too far. So make sure you put yourself, your body, and your hands right in front of where you want to work. So for the next part, we're going to clean up around the ears with the clippers. So again, we want to make sure everything's coming down so that we're cutting exactly the right things. We don't want to cut up into this hair where Frankie's already trimmed. We just want to make these edges perfect. So we can literally, with that clipper blade, lay it straight in there and go down. Straight in there and go down. And then you can turn it on its edge and support it with your other hand with your hand if you need to, and just go along that perimeter, barely touching it, which will take off any little hairs that got missed by the scissors. Again, we're going to do the same around the ear. We're never going to cut up into here. We're never going to go higher. We're just going to cut behind where we've already made our guideline. We're coming up around, just touching the very edge of the hair to take away any straggling long pieces. And then rejoining this part to the back as well, just for the stragglers. There's nothing else we're doing. So we're going to turn Richard around, and Frankie's going to do the other side, just like what I just showed him. First thing we're going to do is the little sideburn edge. So this side is quite short, so don't go above the thing, just cleaning that up. Yes, very gently. And then moving up the front perimeter.
Like this?
Yep. Slowly up. Not going into the hairline at all, just to clean the edge. Okay. And then, good. And turn the other way, around the ear. Following the circle of the ear, not cutting into the body of the hair. Technically now, Richard's had a trim and his haircut is done if all we're doing is trimming. About drying the hair. So after the basic trim, and we've also done a beard trim, which we're going to show you in another video, I just want to show you a little bit more about clipper work, because maybe this trim is not as short as the person who you're working on would prefer. So you can go back in with some clippers and do a little bit shorter work. This is a clipper with a number 4 guard, and Frankie's going to come and take over in a minute. I'm going to show how it's done. So if we bring the comb into the hair and go down to the occipital bone just below it, and we come up with our clippers and rock it against the comb like this, it's kind of a foolproof way to get a little bit of a shorter edge. After we've done all the way around this bottom part and around the ears, we move the comb up just a little bit and we bring our clippers in again, and as we go up we come down with the comb, and that blends your line away. So looks pretty simple, and it is. We're going to let Frankie take over and see how she gets on. Be a little bit more strong with it. Up a little bit higher with your comb, but this time you're pushing your comb down, pushing the comb in and joining it with the clippers so that they're coming together. Yeah?
Yeah.
They need to meet, not just that the comb is coming down to the clipper. Yes, like that. Perfect. Okay. So it takes a little bit of practice. As with everything else on this haircut, I'd say little by little and move slowly. So the clipper up from the bottom, go over the comb. Don't try to do too big of sections at once. Do small sections and then move on. So while you're working, you can easily stop and have a little look if there's areas that need to be defined a bit more or the line drawn out a little bit more. Frankie's work is looking pretty good right now. She's just got to do these side parts, and then we'll blend just here a little bit more. Still keep your comb in here for a guide, just at the occipital bone, but you may have to push in a little bit harder right behind that ear because it's just hard to get to. And then you can still do your joining up with your comb. Now we're going to let the clipper guide right around the top of the ear, and we're going to go in both directions. Move the ear out of your way to make sure you get those hairs right behind. And always right here, there's a little bit of a blend on that corner. So this is where we're going to do the part where we bring the comb to meet the clipper guard. And you're really not cutting very much hair at that point. You're just blending tips in together. Right around the ear in both directions there, and just a little bit of blending there on that corner. The comb comes down to meet the clipper guard, and we stand back and we take a little look all the way around the back of the head. But we don't want to go up in here. We don't want to go too high, because once you get up into this part of the hair, especially people have different kinds of double crowns, etc. A little bit difficult to deal with, and we're only trying to do an emergency trim here. So let's trim, let's blend a little bit more right there at the occipital bone across there. You can see how these particular hairs are still hanging a little bit long. So just with the technique of the comb coming down to meet the clipper guard, taking a little bit more weight out of there. Make sure your comb is always coming down to meet the clipper. So there you have it. A person who's never cut hair before in their life has learned how to do a quick men's trim, which will get him through the rest of the quarantine, hopefully, before he can see his proper hairdresser, which is me. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.